So, Neo, as the quintessential overclocker, see what I did there? What is your current rig that you're gaming on and working on? What is your main rig at the moment?
Oh, that's easy enough. It's an Intel Z890 platform, so that's
All right.
I think the CPU is a 285K, and the motherboard is an Aorus Z890 Master.
Nice,
So
nice.
the Z890 Aorus Master, and then the memory is Corsair CU DIMMs, and then the GPU is a Gigabyte GeForce RTX 5060
Okay.
inside.
And I mean, so what do you think of the Ultra CPUs? I mean, I've been playing with them. I mean, they're not bad, but I've not seen anybody really talk about them. I don't know where the hype is, but I think people are a little bit, put back
Jaded.
by jaded a bit. Yeah, I mean, based off our last conversation we
Yeah,
had on that very topic, and even PC builders, I spoke to a lot of those guys, and yeah, Ultra doesn't seem to be anywhere on
no,
mainstream
not at all.
radars.
Not at all. I mean, it didn't help that gaming wise, it was slower than what Intel released previously, the 14900K in that series. So I think just that made sure that most people were not going to upgrade or change to that platform, which is rather unfortunate because in every other regard, it's pretty good, particularly productivity, heat output, power use. I mean, like an Ultra 7, which is the equivalent of a Core i7, an Ultra 7 in productivity is actually just as fast as a Core i9 in a lot of the stuff, and that's without hyper-threading. So it's so much more power efficient. And yeah, I genuinely like the platform, but I just think the gaming performance is where Intel may not have been able to meet people's expectations.
And I think in our market, people are also going for, I mean, the cheaper solution, cheaper versus performance, or price versus performance is a much bigger factor for us here. So running a slightly older generation is certainly not a problem, I think, for many people, as long as they get the better performance.
Oh yeah, particularly because 14th gen is still relevant, 13th gen is still relevant, and on obviously on the AMD side as well, you still have a lot of what do you call this options that are very affordable. But having said that, the the 265K, which is what I'm working on right now on another video, is actually fantastic value for money. In fact, the price dropped so much because you can get a 265K for about 6,500, and that's a Core Ultra 7.
Mm.
The closest CPU you can get from AMD to that is a Ryzen 5, which only has 6 cores and hyper-threading. So in terms of value for money, definitely the Intel is going to be better for you there, right? Because that CPU is supposed to compete with what Ryzen 9 or Ryzen 9 9900X, but now you're getting it at
Mm, mm.
6,500. So that is fantastic value. And depending on the retailer that you buy with, you might be able to get a copy of Battlefield 6 or some other game. So there's a lot of
Oh, worth
value in
it,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, in terms of the mid-range performance, how does it looking on the entry-level side in the ultra range?
245K is basically not bad at all, actually. However, again, then you're running into the competition with the 9600X from AMD,
Mm,
right? And that's
mm.
always going to be an easier buy for a lot of people,
Oh, yeah.
particularly
Oh, yeah.
because Intel only reduced the price of the 265K, not the entire stack. So what happens is that the 245K is actually not cost effective at all, in fact, right? It's so
Yeah.
close to the price of a 265K that you may as well buy the 265K. So, but entry level wise, yeah, I don't think,
AMD still has it.
yeah, AMD just has it. AMD just has it there. It's very difficult to suggest anything better.
What I've also found recently, and the topic of our discussion today, is actually how cost effective the new 9000 series GPUs are. I mean, we just spoke about it briefly over the weekend. You also got some hands on time with one of those models now. I've got two
Yeah,
9070s here that I'm busy benchmarking, one from PowerColor and one from XFX. And I'm not
yeah.
going to lie, I'm super impressed. I haven't been this impressed with an AMD GPU in a very, very long time. How have you been finding yours?
I mean, my first exposure to the 9000 series actually came via the more lower end cards. So that's the
Mm,
9060 XT, but particularly the 8 gigabyte ones. And of course, 8 GB cards are not loved by anybody for obvious reasons, right? I think we're well past the time of 8 GB cards being
Yeah.
something that should be sold outside of entry level stuff. But nonetheless, AMD did a really good job in terms of the 9000 series. For me personally, the reason I was not a fan of the 7000 series was poor ray tracing performance and FSR. I mean, FSR compared to DLSS was just, it was night and day. And I couldn't bring myself to play that inferior image quality of FSR. And having very dubious ray tracing performance, particularly where Cyberpunk was concerned, I was like, nah, I'm not for this. But now with the 9000 series, they actually fixed both of those things. So the price is good, ray tracing performance is excellent, and FSR 4 is brilliant, right? So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, they've really knocked it out the park. Honestly, they've done such an incredible job with the 9000
And
series.
you mentioned the Cyberpunk, and performance in Cyberpunk has been really good. So in terms of some rate, it's getting much better in ray tracing performance. Obviously, still not up there with the 50 series if you go head to head
Yes.
in ray tracing only. But that only affects certain games. I know Black Myth Wukong battles a bit on the AMD cards, especially at the
Yeah.
higher resolutions and quality levels. But again, it comes down to what you play. I think for most gamers, probably, the guys that play a variety of games, you're going to have a good time. You're really going to have a good time
Oh,
with these cards.
definitely. Definitely. The ray tracing performance is still better than what you get on Nvidia 3000 series,
Yeah.
which means it's actually quite relevant. And if you factor in FSR or any sort of upscaling, particularly FSR now, the ray tracing stops becoming an issue at all because now the compute load is reduced purely because of FSR. The issue that what made ray tracing so problematic on the 7000 series was that there was no way to alleviate that performance hit because FSR was just bad quality wise. So even if you would enable it, you end up with objectively an inferior image. So you may as well not use it. But now even FSR 4 is probably as good as DLSS 3, at least by what Digital Foundry found and other people in terms of image quality. So, and that's for me, that was excellent already. I was more than happy with what DLSS 3 was doing.
Yeah, and look, ultimately, just playing games, I've been having a very good time with these cards. I actually like the 5070 Ti. I think that's a great card if you're in the market for that, and obviously you got all that ray tracing support you'd ever want. But looking at the 9070 XT, yeah, it's a tough choice, especially when money gets concerned. Because depending on where you buy it from, it's going to be a few thousand rand difference or a few hundred rand difference in terms of those two models. But yeah, no, I'm certainly liking what AMD is doing. I want to see more of this. What else are we expecting from AMD in the graphics department? Do you have any insights there?
Well,
The next
it's
card
not
from them?
something that the normal vanilla 9060, because they don't have one yet. So
Yeah,
that's still
yeah.
coming. And unfortunately, that's, well, depending on the price, there's still going to be an 8 GB graphics card. But there was a rumor of a more high-end 9000 series. So essentially like a 9080 XT. But that's just a rumor, even though it's from sort of reliable sources. It's still a rumor. So we will see how that shakes out. But I think right now where AMD is, they've got a really good product stack in terms of price performance. It's very difficult for Nvidia to compete. In fact, Nvidia actually dropped prices on some of their graphics cards purely because of the strength of the AMD numbers, right? And for Nvidia to do so when they definitely don't need the revenue from the GeForce series says a lot. It says AMD has done a really incredible job. And yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
9000 series is excellent.
No,
Very,
excellent.
very, very
Now,
good.
if you look at the variants of a lot of graphics card these days comes out with an OC edition or a gamer edition or a platinum edition. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
How do you feel about these? Because I'm starting to find, I mean, I like choice, right? But there's not always enough difference between these models to really go, yeah, I can see why they all exist.
Definitely, definitely. My recommendation always is if you're going to buy an extra special version or whatnot, it needs to justify itself with, unfortunately, more than the cooler, which is a lot of the differentiator for between these models, right? And if it's not for the RGB, because I do understand people want their rigs to look beautiful, and that's an important thing for them. That I understand, but in terms of I'm going to get better performance from buying the more high-end model, I don't think so. Look, even if I'll make you an example, most of the Nvidia GPUs, perhaps even the AMD ones actually, they run at like 3 gigahertz or something. The clock speed will be at 3 gigahertz or something like that. So even if your extra special version gives you 200 megahertz more. Do you know how little that is in percentage over 3000? You are never going to be able to experience 200 megahertz more, right? Going from 3000 to 3200 is not going to make a game that was uncomfortable to play more comfortable, or it's just never going to do that. That's more a memory bandwidth thing, right? And if you are able to buy a graphics card with a higher memory speed and so forth, then it makes a difference. But the thing is, these days, both AMD and Nvidia don't allow that. So all the graphics cards have to sell at the same memory speed with small variations in clock speed. So it comes down to you buying a cooler. Most coolers are over-spec'd anyway, so buying an extra 1 kilogram of cooling is not going to get you that much. So rather just buy what is cost effective for you and that what looks good in your rig. And if I don't know, the power color Red Devil looks great in your rig, then buy that one. But don't buy it assuming that you're going to get better performance that you can actually use. It's just not going to happen.
And what have you seen in terms of overclocking? Because for me, that has always been one of the other differentiators with the kind of the OC type editions or these special editions, most likely being the better dies on the GPUs, which allow for kind of better overclocking. Have you found there to be a massive differentiator between those editions versus a stock standard that you can still overclock?
Not really. In fact, no, not at all. Particularly with the 5000 series. I mean, RTX 50 on Nvidia side and the AMD side. Reason being, a lot of what would determine whether this card can overclock better than the other one, besides the silicon quality, of course, is power. So if the power budget is only 450 watts, for instance, right, and you have this extreme version and whatnot, it's going to be limited by power draw, right? So you're not going to be able to experience that higher clock frequency. And if you do increase the power drain, and then you are actually going out of that ideal performance versus power draw intersection. So you end up burning up so much more power for what, your 50 megahertz more? Because that's what it comes down to. The binned card is going to give you 50 megahertz more than the unbinned card, right? This used to be big for extreme overclocking when you use LN2 and whatnot, but those days are not there anymore. It's just not that anymore. So yeah,
so when was
buy the normal card.
Good advice. So when was the last time you held a good record at 3D Mark for any of your overclocking attempts? Has it been a while?
For a useless, let me not say useless, for an entry level card which no one competes in, I think I still have the fastest 5060 score on 3D Mark Hall of Fame, I think, for Speedway and Steel Nomad, I believe. And that actually came via the Aorus card, which is, believe it or not, a special edition. So Aorus Elite 5060, 8 gigabyte. And for some reason, that card had a much higher power draw limit. And I think the cores may be binned, but I would not bother binning a 5060 core. The memory OC was really good. And the cooler was, talk about overkill. It was definitely excessive. So yeah, I was able to get like really high clock speeds with that. And I think it's still number one right now, actually. So
is that the card you're still using?
No. It's just, the one I'm using is a gaming OC, but the one that still has the record is the Aorus Elite. So that's where it makes a difference. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Look,
and
if you can buy a card. Pardon?
No, sorry. That card that you were speccing or that you were doing that benchmark on, that wasn't a special early edition engineering sample. That is a retail version, right?
Just a regular retail version. Right. Cool. It's just Gigabyte has some really good limits or freedoms that they've applied to the BIOS there. So You can draw more power than almost any other 5060 I know of, and that I think helps a lot in terms of the clock speeds, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
that is the one thing. But you wouldn't. That doesn't mean the next sample is going to be exactly like that, right? And how much are you willing to pay for that versus the normal card, right? So I would not pay 2 grand more for that. Definitely not. I would rather spend the 2 grand on more storage, NVMe, or better memory, or whatever, AIO, something.
It's always something more to buy. Damn it. Can we not just save our money
Or
for something good?
just keep that money and get Game Pass, right? 2 grand is a whole year of Game Pass and more,
True.
right? I think that
Yeah,
will serve
true.
you better than buying an extra OC version, which I mean, I actually find it ridiculous these days. Like, why would you buy that? You know, just buy the card that's the
Options,
cheapest
variety.
and the best looking one, and then be done with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, I think aesthetics is an important part of it if you're looking for for gaming these
Yeah,
days
I
in our
suppose there is
cases.
that. Sure.
But yeah, it all
But
comes down to what's under the hood.
yeah,
Can you hear me?
definitely. Look, in South Africa, we have a strange situation where there are some 5060 Ti's that cost less than regular 5060s, right?
Oh,
So
that's odd.
yeah, it does happen. And that particularly from the three big vendors, they have their extra special edition versions of all cards. Some of them cost so much that if you go to the second tier menu vendors, you can get a higher end model for lower pricing, right? Why would you buy the 9060 XT Super Edition, Super Duper Edition for a higher price than you could get a 9070 Vanilla Edition? Why? What I
Look,
don't.
no, I'll tell you one thing for guaranteed. If there's a graphics card that's called the Super Duper Edition, I'll buy it.
It better be super. It is so better be super, you know.
Super duper. Yeah, look, performance these days, it's a tough, tech hardware is a tough sell these days because you can get away with so much for a lot less if you're a clever shopper, if you know what you're getting into. And we
Definitely.
have these conversations quite often with readers who's asking us what to buy, and yeah, I mean you get some really good pre-built machines now, entry level, mid range, high, and that's kind of got the best flavors already injected into the case, right? So the best combination, and those seem to be the way to go for the most part. But if you're building your own system, you need to be doing careful hardware, careful research to make sure that you get the best of the best from each of your parts, and trying to keep your budget down because that's what you want to do. That's where the real fun comes in.
Totally, totally. Particularly now, I think you can get a pre-built machine with a 5070 for under 30 grand, which is really good. But there are also graphics cards that are just 30 grand by themselves. I, in that situation, I would definitely go with the pre-built machine because for most people, if I had to do a double blind test and put you in front of a 9070 XT and a 9060 XT, but at 1080p, and I didn't give you a frame rate counter, you would not be able to tell me the difference, right? It's only if you
You,
look
you're
at
right.
the
Yeah,
graphs and things like that.
you raise a good point now. I mean, 1080p, 1440p, and then 4K. I often joke with them because he games in 4K, and I don't think a lot of your average gamers do. It's still kind of
No, no,
a
they don't.
few guys doing 4K gaming in that level at least. Yeah, I'm happy at 1080. I think, or 1440p is still the sweet spot, definitely. But 1080p, I mean, I swap PCs
So
so
for a lot of
often, and
people,
yeah, exactly. 1080p, put in some more frames there, then yeah, you'll have a good time.
yeah, it just depends on how far you sit from your screen as well and what kind of games you're playing. And yeah, I mean, the further you sit from your screen, um, the less it's going to matter, right? As much. And again, we have things like FSR and DLSS that help alleviate a lot of the load that you would have at 4K and whatnot. Even though, like, there are games that look great where the internal resolution is still 1080p, but the output is 4K, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, I'm like, if any graphics card that has reasonable upscaling performance, I can live with because even I always use DLSS, for instance. Even when gaming natively, I'll use DLAA. but I'm always using some sort of upscaling, right, to improve performance and visual quality as well. I'm sure you remember the early DLSS demos showed that sometimes DLSS can be better than native resolution sometimes, right?
Mm, mm.
So things like that, I'm considering that more than just the pixel count.
Yeah. Look, I mean, a lot of people are still a little bit skeptical about the enhancement technologies, but again, it comes down to the game and what type of gamer you are. I guess a lot of people want to say we want to rely on raw power, but as with electric vehicles, we're not really there anymore, right? Everything is
Yeah,
changing.
that's raw power for what? Like I think I've heard people talk about fake frames. Is that as if I don't know, as if the normal pixels that your computer is calculating is not mathematics. It's still all mathematics. It still is.
Mm.
It can't be fake, right? It's not
The
like
the best argument I heard to kind of ask the question for that, or to to kind of understand the AI framing, and this is something I haven't had a solid answer on, but I think the worry for a lot of people is, especially in the competitive space, is if that frame generates, right? So I mean, it's such a minute millisecond count, but let's say you move your crosshair over to somebody, and that frame gets generated, but the movement isn't what was anticipated, or the anticipated movement
mm,
isn't what's actually happening. Does that actually have an effect on the actual
I don't
gameplay?
know. Probably for competitive guys, probably. But with the same token, how many competitive games require you to have a beefy system? They don't, right? Because they're trying to reach as many people as possible, right? So for you to do that, you need to have a game that's not graphically intensive, right? So that's where then you can just use native rendering there. Then you're not going to be depending on upscaling and things like that.
In any
But for
case,
the
yeah.
non-competitive games and the single player games, you want the best pixel quality. I think there is also a tendency to view gaming from just a competitive perspective, but most gamers are not competitive gamers. Most of the market isn't competitive gamers. And for us to sit on a technology purely because an aspect of the gaming audience can't use it for competitive use is for me, it's like, no, you don't have to use it. It's an on-off thing, but the things we've been able to benefit from with FSR, I mean, like games that we would not be able to play without upscaling, like Alan Wake 2, right? It is so graphically taxing that by default, you either have to use FSR or DLSS. It's not an option. I would rather have the game and enjoy it than not have it at all because I want a real frame. Like
Mm.
for CS:GO, yeah, sure, but Counter-Strike is already running 700 frames per second. Why are you using upscaling? Same with so many of these games like PUBG, like so many. They are never graphical powerhouses, never, because you want to reach people, right? And
Yeah, it's a good
so
point. It's a good point, and I don't think a lot of consumers really care. To be honest with you, most of my friends who game, they don't. They just want the best quality. They enable whatever it takes to give them the best quality or the best performance,
precisely.
however they want to play, however they prefer to play. Yeah,
On
fun
PC, I
times.
think it's quality. It's quality over. If you just want to play a game and you don't care about the pixel quality, get a console. But if you're going to
Mm,
spend 30 grand, 40, 50 grand, you obviously want the best rendition of that
quality.
particular
Yeah.
game, right? That's what you want. So that's what you're paying for. I think if you buy a PC for gaming, then you are buying necessarily into the high end of the gaming market. Because if
Unless
it
you're
wasn't
getting
for
a
that,
very low end, unless you're getting a very low end card.
oh yeah, but then you're getting a PC for other things as well. But if you're saying purely
Yeah.
for gaming, I've got a work machine that's separate from this, then you're already committing so much already, right? You're not gonna get a gaming PC for under 20 grand a lot of the time, right? So you
Well,
may
there's
as well
some
get
good
a
pre-builts
PlayStation.
now. Yeah, well, you get some good pre-builts now for 15 grand. I mean, entry level machines at 10 grand. So yeah, it depends on where you sit.
Yeah, I
Consoles
suppose.
do have the benefit of just sit down and play, and that's what I know. A lot of people also just want that, right? A lot of you just want to sit down, switch on, play.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
hardware to mess with, no big boxes, and also you also still require a separate table and, dare I say, a room if you want a good PC experience. With a console, you just sit in your lounge.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, it is one of those things. But yeah, I firmly do believe that for it is the responsibility of the PC platform as well to push the limits. Yeah, it may not be the way that we did traditionally, but things change. As who knew that we would move to EVs and hybrids, right? You can't be fighting to say I need to have a big V8 or whatever. Those days are gone. You have to accept that the thing that you may have liked for whatever reason may not necessarily be the way forward. Right? And I
World is
feel the same way
changing.
about upscaling and things like that.
Yeah, look, it carries a lot of weight coming from you because you do the technical analysis of all these things. So, Nao, where can people reach you or find you if they want to read more about your thoughts and your tests?
They can find me on the Overclocker magazine channel, YouTube channel. On TikTok, I'm there as the Overclocker, of course. And then you can go to the website. I don't know why you do that because everything of mine is on YouTube, but you can go to the overclocker.com. And that's, yeah, pretty much I'm there as the Overclocker on any platform, even on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on
So, how much
the
overclocking
Overclocker.
does the overclocker do these days? Seeing that overclocking is largely not what it was.
Oddly enough, I do a lot of memory overclocking because that's pretty much the only domain that's still there. Um, So I do a lot of memory overclocking just for myself in terms of testing memories and things like that. So I will test things that I know people won't write or won't run. Like I was testing DDR 10,000 on AMD platform, right? I know most
Oh,
people are not
and
going to run 10,000, but
but
I'm
you
testing it
can
anyway.
if you want to.
Yes. I was testing it. Of course, 10,000 is super fast, as fast as I, but how many people have the means to run DDR5 10,000? On the Intel side, I was running 9600. Just things like that. Because I genuinely still love that stuff, but I know that it's not necessarily relevant for everybody that I speak to. Right?
So, my last question then: how much more performance do you get running it at 10,000?
Um,
Is it worth
in
it?
practical terms, zero. But in numbers and benchmarks, you get all the things that make it. In games, you can see the performance difference, but you have to set the games to a resolution and a setting that you otherwise would not play with the hardware that allows you to get those
Sure.
frame rates. What I mean is, if you are using a 5080, for you to see the benefits of DDR5 10,000, you would need to be running low settings, 1080p with ray tracing. How many people run like that? If you change those settings to something more realistic, the bottleneck is GPU, not memory. So you would not be able to tell the difference. So
Cool.
it's an academic exercise, one that I genuinely like doing still, but it is an academic one.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you doing that so that we don't have to mess up our own hardware. Thank you for your service.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Excellent. Nao, as always, appreciate talking to you. And yeah, we're going to, after you've done testing the rest of the 9,000 series, I'm sure we're
Hmm.
going to have another chat and compare some notes. I've got some benchmarks waiting to happen. I've got that 9070 and another 9060 hidden there. So yeah, it's very exciting times. I think if anybody is in the market, I would consider an AMD Radeon 9070 or 9060, the XT versions.
Definitely.
I think they're still the better ones to go for.
Oh yeah, definitely. Particularly the 16 gigabyte ones. You can get a 9060 XT 16 gigabyte for under 10 grand. I think under 6 grand. That is
That's
phenomenal
good.
value.
That is phenomenal value. Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah.
phenomenal value then. Yeah.
All right, now thank you so
All
much.
right then.
We'll chat soon. Cheers.